Hi everyone, I think that's all of us, so we'll make a start. So I'll quickly introduce our speaker and then we'll get into it. Ben Glazier founded his branding and graphic design agency, Glazier Design, in 1998. The agency has its main studio in Fitzrovia and works with PR, law, finance, tech, healthcare and charity sector clients. Ben read law at university, but with a natural family inclination towards design and communication. The desire to make the world not just a better place, but a better looking place was too much to resist. Ben acts as a brand consultant and advisor to companies and charities. His favourite area of work is designing stamps for the Isle of Man government. It's a labour of love and a great challenge. If Ben finds any time to escape work, he spends as much of it as possible with his wife, Angie, and his children, while looking after his bees. I'd also like to mention that today's talk is sponsored by the SCI, who are here today. So if you want to talk to them about membership, then please do. It's well worth it. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. How are you? So I was really pleased to ask just before this lecture what last week's lecture was about, and apparently it was some really heavy molecular biology. I can assure you there'll be nothing of that in my talk. I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to stick to design and the printing techniques that we use in design and how we get effects. Designing stamps, yeah, it is fun. We try and cram as much detail as we possibly can into stamps. And if you think that you're condensing your design down to just 30 millimeters or 40 millimeters square, you've really got to play with all the tools at your disposal to get a design that looks creative, looks attractive, but also can be reduced to a tiny size. We originally designed our stamps at 40 centimeters so that we can work with them and they don't have tiny lines disappearing. So whenever we're doing stamps, we have to take into account the fact that they're going to be reduced by the printers and then go onto a print machine that, although prints at 600 dpi, it really is just ink on paper and a lot can happen. So you put some beautiful fine lines into a design and they all disappear if you're not careful. So I'm going to run through, let's just see if I can, hang on a second. There we are. Our first set of stamps for the Isle of Man government was with the Royal Artillery, and we did the 300th anniversary of the Royal Artillery. But the second set was possibly my favourite set of all time. Stephen Hawking was a client of ours, so we did the branding for the Stephen Hawking Foundation. So we worked with him when he was alive. And we got to do this set, marking 100 years of general relativity. And we worked with Sasha Hayco, who was one of Stephen's PhD students, who wrote all the text for the issue. But I must admit, this gave me the greatest satisfaction. When we're creating stamps, we really do want them to mean things. Clearly, this was a story about science, and science that I generally didn't understand, but by the end of it, I had learned a little bit about black holes and information paradoxes and things like that, because I had to go on the radio and start talking about it at 2 o'clock in the morning, one talk show in the States who wanted to talk about black holes. I had to do some quick reading. But our stamps, what I said about cramming design in, we really do try and put as much design into it as possible. So obviously we feature Einstein and Stephen Hawking on the main stamps, but then just at the time that we were doing these, they had rediscovered gravitational waves. There was a period where they managed to measure them, detect them rather, and so it was a story of the time. The second stamp on there, Hawking radiation, and that was quite fun because we were sent a photograph of a blackboard from Stephen Hawking's study and said, right, that's Hawking radiation, just make it work on the stamp. And the drawing on the blackboard in Stephen Hawking's study had been done by one of his students under his direction. And so we had to then convert that and try and understand it as best we could, put it into graphics and display it on the stamps. And this is where the fun begins, because we just love cramming information in. But it's quite a risky craft, because if you get one thing wrong, it can really embarrass you. I mean, you've probably seen loads of stamp mistakes like Royal Mail, where on the Sherlock Holmes issue, there was someone playing a violin and it had the bow handle at both ends of the bow because one of the artists had decided that actually that looked better. than just having a normal violin bow. You can't really get away with that because there is always someone who's going to spot your error. But this set was truly the most fun we had. And at the end of the whole series, we produced a special book with Eddie Redmayne signing the inside covers and got to present one to Professor Hawking, which was, that was nice. But the print techniques, most of the printing that you see when you get sheets of stamps or envelopes, it's standard CMYK plus special colors on an old Heidelberg, or probably a fairly new, very expensive Heidelberg. Some of the stamp machines I've seen are up to 12 colors. So they will run the CMYK and then all the specials. Particularly Royal Mail, you know, all of those red, blue, yellow stamps that you see as part of your general issue, those are run as single Pantone colors. The press for that is immense. I remember going to their print works and seeing rolls this high of stamps, and I think there were 1.2 million stamps on each roll. And the value of those rolls, I looked at them, there were about 40 of the rolls sitting in a highly secure cage. I said, well, you know, what's the story of those? He said, oh yeah, colour was a bit off, we've got to trash those. And because they're currency, they have to be securely disposed of. And when they say the colour was a bit off, the tolerance for Royal Mail, they are incredibly strict about the colour that's used. And I don't know if you noticed, but the red on Royal Mail stamps changed recently. And so they are incredibly strict. If it's off colour, it might as well be a forgery. And that's one of the biggest problems we've got in stamps today, is that there is a vast amount of mail fraud, people faking stamps. So we like to add different effects, foils, special colours, special inks. On this one, you can just see it on here, but what we had on this stamp was CMYK print in the background, and then where it says Isle of Man and the Queen's Head, that was done in an iridescent foil, the kind of foil that reflects light in all directions. We just felt that that really fitted Stephen Hawking's works, fracturing light and throwing it everywhere. Why do we make them look special? It's just a stamp. Well, it is just a stamp, but there are millions of stamp collectors around the world who like stamps for their artistic value, for collection purposes, creating sets, and as human beings, we are natural collectors. But there's also a reason you want a stamp to stand out. It might have a corporate message, it might have a government message, it might be a message of hope, or it might be celebrating a great occurrence. And this is where these special sets for the Isle of Man Post Office come in. They are generally aimed at collectors, and they tend to mark special occasions, but special occasions that have some significance to the Isle of Man, or Royal Mail will do special occasions that have significance for the UK. And they also do artistic sets. So I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Rings and 2001 and all of those, you know, there are sets that are done just for the beauty of them, but they also make really nice objects to post. And when you receive an envelope, it's nice to have a real stamp on it. In fact, in marketing terms, there's probably only one piece of marketing that has a guaranteed 100% open rate, and that is a hand-addressed envelope with a real stamp. Why? Because who would leave an envelope with handwriting and a real stamp on it on the doormat or throw it straight in the bin? It could be a card from your grandma with £5 in. So it really is a powerful message, and we use it to communicate messages. I'll come on to the corporate stuff a little bit later. One set that we had great fun doing was One Small Step. So we marked the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon missions. And the set, well, in fact, we did two sets. This first set takes you through from the start of the missions all the way through up to Apollo 12. And of course, Apollo 11, the seventh stamp there, was the first footprint on the moon. That footprint, I'm glad to say, and the reason why I asked to do this set of stamps, that footprint was made just a few hours before I was born. So I was born during the moon landing. So I kind of asked Isle of Man Post Office, like, would you let me do something? And she said yes. And she said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I suppose I better get in touch with NASA. And she said, all right, carry on. I must admit, I used a name there. So I wrote to the communications people at NASA and said, hi, I'm Stephen Hawking's designer, and I'd like to do a set of stamps to do with 50th anniversary moon landing. Got an answer back in about half an hour, which was really nice. And in fact, producing this issue, we even got to go and launch them in mission control in Houston. I did stand and talk to ground control and flight director. Ground control really exists. When I said that we start to put details into stamps, hopefully you can see some of the smaller details there. Now, bearing in mind that those stamps are only that big, you really probably won't be able to see them on the stamps with the naked eye. Some people can, but we decided to put all of these different secrets in. So at the top, we've got 3 people. So on the Apollo 11 stamp, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. The top right, we've got an important date. So I think on that one, that was the speech that Kennedy gave at Rice University Stadium. He said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade." And we have the quote down the side. And then we have GPS references. So that GPS reference on the bottom left of the stamp there, that was a GPS reference to the point on Rice Stadium football field where Kennedy gave his speech. And then up at the top, just a little secret code. It's a binary code for initials. And what we did was to hide the initials of certain people in the issues. The 3 people that we really chose to commemorate on the first 3 stamps in this issue were the 3 people who died on the launch pad during testing of the Apollo 1 mission. Armstrong, Aldrin, Collins, the people who landed on the moon, well, obviously Collins didn't, but Armstrong and Aldrin, and that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And as you can imagine, that was slightly controversial because loads of people disagree on whether those were actually the words he said. But we went with the NASA line, and the guy who told us exactly what we should put on there was a guy called George Abbey, who ran the Apollo missions. So we worked with him on the stamps, worked with a couple of people at NASA from the Apollo history program. And it really was great to start hiding these details in. And again, why do we hide details? If you can't see them on the envelope as it comes through the door, what's the point? The point is the story. The point is it's our ability to be able to craft a story into a set of stamps that tells the history of something or adds information, adds intrigue. Why do we do that? Well, stamp collectors love it because if there's a story behind the stamps, it makes them more collectible. The post office love it because they can use it in their PR. They can go out to the press and say, right, we've got this great story, great issue. We're working with NASA. We're working with the guy who ran the Apollo program. We're going to meet up with astronauts, and it allows them to do a little bit of PR around it. For us, why would you do a boring stamp? For me, I really want every stamp to be the most interesting stamp people have ever seen, and that's why we start putting details in. And the print techniques as well. Print techniques, we can use different inks, and we don't just use. Let's see if I can get on to the next one. We don't just use CMYK. We can also use golds and silvers and any Pantone color at our disposal. But we've also got one nice thing that we can use. This was an issue marking the 50th anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's brilliant, brilliant film. And we created this set. And what you see from the visual there, that's just the stamps. But you'll notice that the blue on that stamp, it may look quite pale, but it sort of glows. But that's not the only secret on these stamps. What we did on these stamps was to hide messages in an ink that would only be activated by a certain spectrum of UV light, and then they would glow yellow, which was fun. So we took some quotes from the film. I'm not sure if these are exactly the final versions, but we also put some music on there, which of course, I don't know if you remember, as Hal reaches his end, he starts singing Daisy, Daisy, and it's a great moment in the film. So we transcribed the music from that and added that to the stamp as well. And it's just having fun with those bits of information. You know, this is it's an art form, but there's one other reason why we can hide secrets in. As I mentioned earlier on fraud, and fraud is in stamps is very common. You know, it's very easy to print something if it's just standard CMYK, and it's something that the Royal Mail had a particular problem with. People printing vast batches of stamps, selling them in a pub, selling them to businesses, And there was a time when there was quite a large percentage of fraudulent stamps. And I don't know if you've noticed the change in Royal Mail, but now if you buy a Royal Mail stamp, it's got a QR code at the side. Every single stamp now has an individual QR code on it, and it can be tracked from the factory to the purchase point, to when it first goes into the mailing system as you post it, to where it arrives. It can be the entire journey, the entire customer experience can be tracked. That gives a vast amount of big data to the Royal Mail to allow them to plan their systems. And although they said, they're not tracking you where you post stuff, because it's just going from a post box, it's big data. It can be used to improve services. This was a fun issue. So over in Covent Garden is Freemasons Hall, which is one of the most beautiful Art Deco buildings you'll ever see. When UGLE, United Grand Lodge of England, were marking their 300th anniversary, the Isle of Man really wanted to do an issue on this because they had a great relationship in the Isle of Man with their local Freemasons who support a vast number of charities in the Isle of Man. And so it was an interesting project. And I remember Maxine from Isle of Man Post Office coming to me and saying, "Ben, do you know any Freemasons?" I thought, well, I might. I can get in touch. So I got in touch with them and asked if they would be happy to do a set of stamps. And they said yes. And in fact, they were very happy because the Royal Mail had turned them down. A little bit too controversial for the Royal Mail. So we produced this set. Just a nice, simple set using the jewels of the officers in a Freemasons lodge. But again, with hidden secrets in the stamps. So for example, we've got GPS references at the top. What you probably can't see in great detail is that there's a ribbon, pale blue ribbon, going all around the stamp at the edge, which has got HRH DOK GN50, His Royal Highness Duke of Kent, Grand Master, 50th year. And again, on this set of stamps, we use a secret ink. So here's the set of stamps with a blue UV light on them, and it reveals the logo from UGLE marking the 300th anniversary of UGLE. Now, who sees that? Who carries around a UV light with them? Well, I mean, obviously I do, but not many people do. Well, actually, the people who probably saw this the most was in the post office. In all the post systems all around the world, as stamps are whizzing through, there are black lights glowing on them to pick up forgeries, pick up fakes, pick up bad paper, but also collectors. And I think this issue, particularly because it was linked to charity, and the Masonic Charitable Foundation got a percentage of the proceeds from the stamps. 1.5 million of these stamps went all around the world. They became a collector's item for the Freemasons. And we had so many nice comments about them. But I'll just go back to that. Oh, can I get back one? Oh, no, wrong way. Oh, well. Hang on. I'm going too far. How do I get back? There we go. What I wanted to say is, again, for us, the important thing is that these are objects of beauty. So as our designers work on these, we are creating little tiny works of art. And if you look at some of the details in them, we've used Art Deco influences from the building. It is a work of art, and we do actually make the effort to make sure that all of this looks beautiful. Printing for these, special inks in those, you've got a gold that was used on the main part of the image. The text on the left-hand side was a gold foil. Then we've got the UV ink on. So we've got 3 different specials on there that allow us to create something that's quite special. This was another good one. 100 Years of the Royal Air Force, a couple of years ago. We created a set. And again, using details and special inks, we included a lot of information in these. All of the GPS references lead to those bases that we see listed on the stamp. So RAF Hendon, that GPS goes to the center of the landing strip there. And it's become a little bit of a theme to try and connect stamps to different places in both the Isle of Man and the rest of the UK. So RAF Andreas, one of the bases on the Isle of Man. Now, this set I have a bit of a personal connection to this as well, and you probably see a theme here. Every time I think of a really good idea, I get in touch with the Isle of Man government and ask if I can do it. This set was quite special to me because my grandfather was a Socrates Camel pilot in the First World War. His war lasted 2.5 weeks. He was 17. He went to Hendon, did his training, and was sent over to France. He got shot down a couple of times. And the final time he got shot down, he got a tracer round through the leg, managed to get back across enemy lines, was invalided back to the UK, recovered, and then went on to train other pilots. Now, those 20-minuters, those Socrates Camel pilots, so many of them were lost. We got in touch with the RAF Benevolent Fund and asked if they would like to do an issue. And the reason we work with them is because, again, a charitable element. We try and have a charitable element to every set that we do. And the RAF Benevolent Fund, they help me choose these stamps, choose the vehicles on the stamps. We've hidden details in there, like the name of the aircraft and medal ribbons down at the bottom left. But the one thing we did hide in here was a poem. I'm sure some of you will know the poem High Flight by John Gillespie McGee that ends and reached out his hand and touched the face of God. So we hid that poem in the stamps. You can't see it. Well, I'm not there anyway. You can see it here, because what we did was to hide the poem on the stamps, 2 lines to each stamp, and then on the final stamp, his name, date of birth, date of death, and his Spitfire engine, serial number, and call sign. And he died at Cranwell during a training mission. He flew down through the clouds, hit another aircraft, and was killed. They found the poem High Flight in his cabin a few days later. He was only 19 at the time. And so we got in touch with the coders at Bletchley and asked if they could translate it into Morse code for us. So we've got a poem hidden in UV ink on stamps in Morse code. So I know we're pushing it a bit here. But it's a little bit testing for people to work out. However, we did get people working it out and coming to us, and they'd read the publicity, and they had taken the time to look under a black light and actually go and transcribe the Morse code themselves. That is what gives us pleasure. It's fun. And for the printers, let's just say we like to make their life really, really difficult. With all these UV inks, they're unpredictable. If you have a really dark background, they just don't show. So we tend to use UV inks on lighter backgrounds. The other thing is that they fluoresce under different frequencies of ultraviolet. So there was one set of stamps that arrived at the Isle of Man government. They all shone their UV torches on them. They said, it's not working. You didn't print it. You didn't print it. They got in touch with the factory and they said, no, we did print it. You've just got the wrong torches. So they had to go out and buy a whole load of new black lights so that they could see the print. And it was there, thank goodness. So what's changed? What's changed in printing at the moment? As I just mentioned, the Royal Mail stamps, those QR codes, now obviously they're not litho printed, because with litho printing, you make a print plate for cyan, one for magenta, one for yellow, one for black, one for each of the other colours, and they're either aluminium or plastic plates. You can't vary them. So how do you print a QR code on 1.2 million stamps on a roll that's different each time? Well, what's happened in the last couple of years is that we've moved into digital printing technology. So all of those stamps now, they are either inkjet or laser digital printed. And this gives you the ability to have every single stamp different. So we started to use this, hiding codes and things. What's given us the advantage on this? Digital printing has come forward so fast, and this is one of the advances. So we work as consultants to Xerox, and Xerox developed a technology. There's a great big production press called the Iridesce, and it can print in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black toner. But it's also got 2 extra stations, so you can either add gold or white or silver or clear, fluorescent pink, and you can add these under the CMYK layers or over. And what that gives you is the ability to meld colours, create new colours, have fluorescence, metallics. And it's not like a foil, which is shiny metallic, it's a subtle metallic. But the main breakthrough that they had was, and I'm not even going to try and go into the science of this, you guys can tell me all about it, emulsion aggregation. Apparently, Instead of the old toner where you grind down powder, mix up a substance, grind it down again, mix it again, grind it again, until you get an absolutely pure crystalline substance, which is pretty much like the picture on the bottom there. A bunch of ugly grains that make the inside of copiers really messy. The print is slightly inaccurate. We're talking microscopic level. What they've managed to develop is this new EA toner that uses an ultra aggregation. They grow these little particles of toner. So they're smooth and round and you get beautiful print from them. But also they're far more environmentally friendly. They require less toner, less energy. They can use lower temperatures to print. And it's made a profound difference to printing. Printing is often criticized as being environmentally unfriendly because we're putting ink on paper that's going to end up either in landfill or being washed off as stuff goes for recycling. It's not necessarily the case. Sometimes actually printing uses less energy than the digital version of the marketing that would have gone in its place. So this advantage has changed our game completely because we can now create sets of stamps where every stamp is unique. We can put individual codes on stamps so that the files, when you put them in through the print machine, are merged with a data file. Every single stamp is unique. It means you can really trace things. Very hard to fake as well because the data on them is unique to each stamp. The first set that we did with these was actually a corporate thing for Xerox themselves. So we created this little set of stamps for one of their conferences in London. And again, we've got fluorescence that we can use here. And you can see the lovely bright pink on there. It's nice and bright. But under a black light, it really glows. So these effects can now come into digital printing and they give us far more variety in what we can do. And in fact, we just used them for the last set of stamps for the Isle of Man post office that featured the Queen's head. So this was a celebration set. It was a reprint of lots of earlier editions of stamps with one self-made stamp in the middle. I don't know if you know, but every stamp in the UK that bears the Queen's head or the King's head now has been personally signed off by the monarch. They have absolute right of refusal. And I know that the Isle of Man government sometimes get back the submission letters with notes in the margin. And certainly the Queen used to like to make notes. The Royal Stamp Collection is vast. Her father and grandfather were stamp collectors. And so those personal notes back to the Isle of Man government, the Isle of Man post office, are quite touching, really. I mean, it's quite nice to me to think that all those bits of work that we've done have been signed off by the Queen. So this last set, the final set, it was actually the first set of digitally printed stamps for the Isle of Man post office. And there we've used a gold on the edge. So we can mix all these colours now. We've got 2 spare slots in these small machines. We can also do short runs of stamps. So mixing gold and silver and fluorescence. And if you mix these, you get unexpected effects. So putting fluorescent gold over, fluorescent pink over yellow somehow gives us an incredibly glowing Dutch orange colour that is really vibrant. An orange that you couldn't really achieve in CMYK printing unless you printed it as a Pantone. And that was a lovely set to do. And just last week, we got royal approval on the first 3 sets for King Charles. So we've got our first sets through. They weren't refused. One of the sets that we enjoyed doing during the pandemic, quite a few things happened in the Isle of Man. Obviously, their lockdown was as brutal as ours, and they're also on an island, and a lot of stuff didn't come into the island. Quite a few people suffered. Isle of Man Post Office called us up and said, we'd like to do a set of stamps to thank all of the people that were involved in the effort on the Isle of Man during the pandemic. And this was on a Sunday evening that Maxine called me. I said, sure, great. No, I'll put some thought to that. When do you want them? She said, Tuesday. So we had to I came up with the idea on the Sunday and put together this carry us through. We looked at all the things that would carry us through the pandemic and out the other side. And it's easy now that it all feels like it's kind of gone away. It's easy to forget. just how big a shock it was to the country when we were locked down, closed away, and people were dying. And who were the people who helped us? What were the things that got us through? So we created a set. Love will carry us through, faith, care, compassion, work, community, words, and of course science. Probably one of the most important things, all of those nights spent researching vaccines, developing things at extreme pace. And this set was then designed by my team in 24 hours. We created the set and it went off to approval with the Isle of Man government on Wednesday, and then it went to the palace and it came back in a record time, the fastest they've ever had a royal approval, for obvious reasons. And I'll just finish with what we put on the science stamp, because I thought I'd bring it back to you guys. What can you see on there? I don't know if you guys even would know this. So when we were doing this one, Lucy Hawking, Stephen's daughter, is the client of ours, and I said, Lucy, what do you think we should put on the science stamp? And she said, well, obviously Hawking radiation. So we've got a couple of Stephen Hawking formulas on there. But the one at the top right and the one at the bottom right over there. Anyone know what that?
Is it coffee? Yeah.
Oh, yes. And if you've got coffee, what you also have. When you're up late at night in the lab, working all evening, what's the only thing that gets you through? Tea. That's DNA-based tea, apparently. So it's just a little joke that we put in the stamp, and it was kind of Lucy's idea, and it went down quite well with the Isle of Man government. So I thought I'd just finish on the only bit of science I'm really going to put in here. I'm not a scientist, my son is. He's in chemistry and chemical engineering. And I'll leave you with that coffee and tea that gets us through. Thank you very much. Now, have you got any questions? Yes.
I know some years ago the Royal Mail did some that not just had colours and things, also had smell.
Yeah.
Have you been involved in anything?
So we haven't done a sniff one yet. We've worked with phonographic inks that will change depending on heat. So if you hold your hand on Royal Mail, I think did a set.
I can't remember what the word was.
Yeah, I can't remember which one, but it had, but this a large part of the stamp was black, unless you put your hand